help a stranger with leukemia. Later in the program, with the discovery of baby bull sharks in the St. Johns, tells us about how the species is faring and why that might not be good news for the river. But first, you will know my guest as the longtime evening anchor at First Coast News Channel 12 and the host of the consumer advocacy segment, Ask Anthony. But recently, someone came to ask Anthony for something a little different. Let's take a listen to how he first told viewers about it back in May.
In tonight's Ask Anthony, I'm sharing something personal. This time, I'm not just reporting a story, I'm living it. It started with a simple cheek swab, and now it might end with saving a life. Last Monday, I had several vials of blood drawn for further testing. The reason, my blood stem cells might be able to save the life of a man with leukemia. This is a process that started 17 years ago.
Anthony Austin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me today, Ann.
So this was 17 years ago, as you said, back
17 years ago, 2008.
2008, and you were just a little baby reporter
22 years old.
in Texas.
Yep.
So tell us about how you got involved on this path.
So this all started, like I mentioned, in 2008. I was a fresh reporter right out of college, working in my hometown of Tyler, Texas, at the CBS affiliate there. I was the weekend anchor, also the weekend reporter, also the weekend producer, also the weekend editor, because if you know anything about TV, when you start at a small market, you do it all. So it was my job to go out and gather stories on the weekend and then also anchor the news that night. And so, of course, we're always looking for things that are happening in the community. And we have been contacted about a young girl. Her name was Emma Ruth, and she had a rare blood disorder. It was called Fanconi anemia, and it's a rare genetic disorder that affects the bone marrow. And her family wanted to get her story out there because they were looking for a bone marrow donor. And so one weekend, one Saturday, I went and covered the story. They were having a bone marrow drive. And so, of course, as reporters, we want to try to tell the story the best way that we can. So knowing that this little girl needed a bone marrow donor, I wanted to encourage as many people as possible to sign up to become a donor. So I became a donor myself. I showed people with a simple cheek swab, that's all it took, you could become a donor. And so I swabbed my cheek for the story. My information was put into the registry. And I kind of thought at the time, okay, I'm going to do this. They're never going to call me, though. What are the chances? And for several years, I never heard anything until back in April. I got a phone call right before our 5 p.m. newscast, literally a minute before the newscast, saying, hey, you're a match.
Wow. And I mean, we've all covered stories that have a particular emotional impact on us. Was this that kind of story, or was this sort of just an offhand decision that you kind of made in the process of presenting the newscast?
I would say it was an emotional connection because I felt for this family. I felt for this little girl, these parents. I think Emma at the time, I want to say she was probably only 2 or 3 years old when all of this was going on. And I'm just thinking about these parents who they're looking at their child thinking, how long is she going to be with us? How much time does she have left? And to hear their pleas for someone to please step up and hopefully be a match for their daughter, to be a bone marrow donor, to help, extend her life, her time with them here on earth. I had that connection. I was like, if they're going through this, I know other people are going through it as well. And what can I do to help? Because that's always been my goal in life. I originally wanted to become a doctor, but that didn't go so well. But I've always wanted to do a job where I could help people. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what I do with Ask Anthony. So I've always, since the beginning of my career, I've wanted to do something where I was making a difference in someone else's life.
So you get this call right before the newscast, and I'm guessing it caught you a little off guard because it had been
did.
a minute.
I thought it was a spam call at first because I haven't heard from these people in 17 years. And after that point, I'm thinking they probably don't even have my information anymore. I'm like, why? I was like, this can't be real. This has to be a scammer. And then after I got the phone call, they left a voicemail. Then I got a text message. And in that text message, it had all of my information. And I was like, I don't think this is a scam because they know a little bit too much about the process and, what I did 17 years ago when I signed up. But just looking at that text message saying, you're a match. We think you can help save a life." I turned to my co-anchor Heather and I said, "Look at this." Like I was like, they're asking. They want me to call them immediately about helping this man with leukemia.
Did you have to think about it a little bit?
You know, a little bit, but I was more curious than anything. I wanted to know how the process worked because I'll tell you, when I signed up 17 years ago, a lot of people, and I want to talk a little bit about this too. There's a big misconception that becoming a bone marrow donor or actually doing the donation process, that it's painful.
Mhm.
That's a big misconception. And so I had that in the back of my head. I thought I was going to have to go under anesthesia. I thought they were going to take a giant needle and just jab it into my side, into the bone to get the bone marrow. And I was going to be out for several weeks.
I
You
mean,
know,
that's how it used to be,
that's how
right?
it used to be.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I had that in the back of my mind. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But I called them after our 6 o'clock newscast that night and I spoke to them about it. And they told me about another process called PBSC. And that stands for peripheral blood stem cell collection. And they said it's basically like giving plasma. Like you're going to be hooked up to a machine for 4 to 6 hours, and we're going to take the stem cells out of your bloodstream. And they said, you'll be back to work the next day if you want to go back to work the next day. They said it's not, they said that's a big misconception that you would have to do that. They said that, medical technology has advanced to where we can do that now and still help save someone's life. Now that happens, I think 90% of the time, but there's still a 10% chance that you might have to do it the other way, where you would have to, where it becomes more of a procedure surgery, where you would have to go under anesthesia and do it. And they told me that's usually when you're donating to a child. I donated to a 36-year-old man
And
with leukemia.
that's all you know about him right now?
That's all I know. So for 1 year, they won't give me a lot of information about him. I'm hoping to meet him one day, but after a year, they're going to decide. Well, I should say this. After 1 year, he can decide if he wants to give me his personal information. And I've already said I want to give him mine because I would like to meet him. And I think they do that more for privacy and just for recovery
Mhm.
reasons. They don't make any contact. They don't allow you to make any contact with the patient that you're donating to. But all I know is he's a 36-year-old man with leukemia, and he lives in the United States.
And so you're saying that, most cases, I was surprised it was 90% of cases like this, of donations, they can be done in that less
Mhm.
invasive way. But I would guess that makes the process of finding donors easier. And it is necessary because I think in your reporting, you say that only 25% of patients who need this kind of marrow transplant have a match within their own family.
Right. So normally, if you're ever in a situation like this where you might need a bone marrow donor, if you need someone's stem cells, normally your brother or sister, your siblings, they would be the best match for you. But that's not always the case. So let me look at my statistics here because I did write down that number. So yeah, every year about 18,000 people in the U.S. are hoping or for some life-saving stem cell or bone marrow transplant, but only about 30% of patients, as we were just talking about, actually find a match within their family. So that's why it's important for strangers to get into this registry, because if your brother or sister, if that doesn't work out, well, you need help from somewhere.
Right.
And the help is always not right around the corner. So the gentleman I donated my stem cells to, he's here in the United States, but some people, they're donating to someone in Australia, China, somewhere across the globe. So that just kind of tells you about the importance.
Mm. If you're just joining us, we're talking to First Coast News anchor Anthony Austin about his recent experience donating to the National Marrow Donor Program. If you've got questions or comments, you can join our conversation by giving us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. So, Anthony, finding a match is a process. And I know that when you talked to the woman who helped coordinate your care,
Right.
she explained that it can be challenging. And she told you that your particular genetic match
Mhm.
was pretty rare.
Yes.
Um, and in some ways that has to do, I mean, we talk a lot, even on this program, about, race is kind of a social construct. But
Mhm.
ethnicity is a thing, and
Right.
people's genetic background when it comes to matching something like this does matter. And so having a diverse donor base is important.
Very important. And I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because I really wanted to talk about this because it really put things into perspective for me. So you asked me how long did it take for me to think about it to decide? Well, I had a lengthy conversation with my donor specialist, and I asked her, I said, what if I decide I don't want to do this? And she said, well, she said, I see that you're black. She says, chances are the man you're donating to, he's black as well. And this, when you're matched with someone, it all has to do with genetics and uh, other issues as well. And here's the reality of the situation. Um, when it comes to the donor registry, uh, patients of color, it's really hard for them. So listen to these numbers. According to the National Marrow Donor Program, black patients have just a 29% chance of actually finding a match, a 29% chance of survival. Now, compare that with white patients who have a 79% chance because there's more, people of a Caucasian background within the registry.
Mhm.
But when it comes to Black or African American people in the registry, the numbers are not that high. So if you're a person of color, and this is whether it be Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever it may be, those are all different ethnicities that are not represented in this registry right now. You're
Mhm.
going to have a hard time finding a match. Now, I know from personal experience as a black man myself, there's a lot of, just because of the way things have been over time in history, a lot of concern about medical testing and, experimentation within the black culture.
Mistrust.
Mistrust, exactly. And so it's been hard for donors of color to come forward and participate in this program. And so that's one mission that I have right now is to encourage people from different backgrounds to actually join this registry to help save a life because there's a lot of people out there who need your help.
We've got a question from Sue on the West Side. Good morning, Sue. Go ahead.
Good morning. I was just wondering, I'm thinking about a show like Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr.
Hmm.
The fact that somebody is a match, does that maybe open up an opportunity to find family somewhere else in the world that you matched with?
Yeah, it's interesting question. Is there any connection to ancestry as far as you know?
Sue, that is a great question. That's something that's been in the back of my mind about this. What if this person is related to me
Hmm,
some way?
that would be fascinating.
It is. I mean, there's a big possibility that that could be the case. You never know.
So you understood when it became clear to you that people of color are
Mhm.
underrepresented in this registry, that this person who is in need of this match, if you didn't donate, could be in a particularly difficult
Right.
situation. It's not easy to find a match even within that universe of people of color within the registry. And
Right.
so um, I would guess that created in your mind a greater sense of urgency.
It did. It did. Because I asked them, with this process, how long do I have? Is this something I need to do immediately? And they said, your patient is in fair condition right now, but that can change. And even when they call me this week, and I guess I can go ahead and tell you the good news since my donation, I did receive a call this week that he has been transplanted with my stem cells and he is doing better. But they told me that this was something that we needed to move, not immediately, but we need to take care of it as soon as possible.
Sure. And so one thing that I thought was fascinating that you mentioned because you did regular Facebook posts
Right,
kind
right.
of updating us on the process. And I want you to talk a little bit about the process. But one thing that you learned is that the patient actually inherits your blood type
Yes.
and your
Yes.
allergies.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. So this was really interesting to me. I had to go through an extensive health questionnaire. I got asked a lot a lot of questions about my background and my history. So for example, with me, I can tell you that I'm allergic to ibuprofen, sulfa products. I can't mow grass, which I'm thankful to have that allergy because I'm really allergic uh, to grass. So the man who I donated to, he's going to take on those same allergies. He's
Wow.
going to have my blood type and my allergies.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
So you had to go, as you said, this is a lengthy examination process,
Hmm.
a health assessment, but you also had to get some injections over a
Yes.
period.
Hmm.
Can you kind of describe, was that difficult? Was it painful? How intrusive was it?
Yes. So 5 days before the actual donation process. Also, let me just kind of walk you through a little bit about what I had to do because I want people to understand kind of if you're thinking about this, what's required after you become a match. So first, I had to go have several vials of blood drawn, and we're talking like 10 plus vials of blood drawn. Thankfully, I'm not scared of needles. So that was done about 2 or 3 times, and they're just basically checking your blood for different diseases, infectious diseases, just kind of taking an overall look at your health. So I had that done. That all came back. Then I had to go for an actual physical, which is kind of your standard physical, just to make sure that um, everything's okay. And then they had to do a vein assessment, and that's where they look at my arms to see, my to basically look at the mapping of my veins to see if I would be good for a donor because you're hooked up to a machine for several hours and the blood is flowing back and forth. So I had that done. But after all that came back clear, then it's time for the actual donation. So 5 days before, I had to take what's called filgrastim injections. And so I actually had a home health nurse. You can either do it yourself or have a home health nurse come and do it. Well, I want a nurse to come do it. So a nurse came to my house every day, checked my vitals, and did this injection. And I always want to make sure, I want to look at my notes here about the filgrastim injection, see if I wrote that down to kind of explain exactly uh, what they do. But basically, it kind of, when you get these injections, it increases your stem cells
Hmm.
within your blood, and that makes it easier for collection. And so when you take these injections, you do develop bone pain. That's something I dealt with. I had back pain, hip pain. You have fatigue. You have headaches, possibly. Um, but I told myself a temporary discomfort was worth saving a life. And it kind of just felt like I had the flu at the time, but it's just basically your body working in overtime to get these stem cells, these platelets produced so that you're able to have a good collection on Monday or on the day you donate.
Yeah.
And it worked out well for me because they said I was a super producer and I was spinning them out just like that. So the process took a little bit shorter for me.
Oh, that's
But
great.
that is something to mention that you have to do. And I had 3 injections a day for 5 days.
Wow.
They gave me 2 in the arm and usually 1 in the leg. They also do the abdomen, and it didn't hurt that much. So I just wanna, if anyone's thinking about becoming a donor, it wasn't that painful, but you do have a little discomfort, but once the donation happened, I was fine after that.
And you had good veins and you
Yes.
were releasing a lot of these stem cells.
Mhm.
So how long did the actual collection process take?
So normally it lasts about 4 to 6 hours. I was done in probably less than 4 hours just because I produced so many, which they said was a good thing, for my patient. It just really depends. Sometimes, especially women, it could take about 2 days.
Mm.
But that's kind of rare, but it's normally 4 to 6 hours for the average person. And you go to different facilities. So I went to Boca Raton. I know Houston is a popular spot to go, Seattle, Washington, D.C., but the people down in Boca, it was like a vacation.
Mm.
And the National Marrow Donor Program, they pay for everything. They put me up in a nice hotel on the beach. I had a car service. They ordered lunch for me during the whole process.
Wow.
So they really roll out the red carpet for you.
I saw that even in some cases, I guess they can cover, if you're losing wages from being absent from
Yes,
work or
yes.
child care coverage, if
Mhm.
you need to,
Right,
help
yep.
with that. So they really do try to make sure that it's at least expense free,
Yeah.
even though it isn't, entirely a burden free process.
Exactly. They'll pay for a companion to come for you. They'll pay for flights, food, you name it. I put my dog in boarding and they paid for that. So, I mean, they try to do whatever they can to make sure that you can do this.
So, I mean, what's your upshot? What's your takeaway here from this process that began so long ago? You feeling pretty good about having done it?
I am. And a big question that I've received, would you do this again? And I said, without a doubt, I would. Knowing that just a moment of my time can save someone else's life, can extend someone else's life with their family, with their friends, with their loved ones. How can I say no to that? a temporary discomfort for me for a lifetime for someone else, I would do it in a heartbeat. And right now, I'm actually going to remain a donor for this gentleman for the next year. And there is a possibility that I might have to make another donation.
Wow.
I would have to do the Phil Graston shots again, but I would have to go through the process. And without a doubt, I
Oh.
would do it.
Well, Anthony Austin, I guess is a good ask of Anthony in
Yeah,
this case.
exactly. The ultimate ask, Anthony.
That's right. He came through. Well, Anthony Austin, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your story and thanks for doing it.
Anytime, anytime. I encourage everyone. You can always reach out to me. I'm going to talk more about it on the news tonight at 6 p.m. about my journey and show some video of the process. But feel free to email me at askanthony@firstcoastnews.com if you have any questions about becoming a bone marrow donor.
All right. It's Anthony Austin. Thanks for being here.